Good morning. It's Friday morning. We've made it to Friday. What a deal. And I have all my errands done. Velda and I decided to rest today. I'll be out of town preaching on Sunday. Chris and Julie will be at Galena First Baptist doing music. And Butch Fonner from Shiloh Baptist Church will be preaching. And y'all come out if you can. I will return Sunday, the June the 2nd, and I will be there every Sunday throughout the summer. I have altered and shuffled my schedule and canceled some things and postponed some things to later in the year so that I can be at Galena First Baptist Church every Sunday. And I hope that you like me coming back to be there regular instead of having guest preachers 2 or 3 times a month. I know it's a weird situation, but we're going to see if we can do some damage over the summertime. And we're going to be doing some more events with Full Gospel Church. And we're also going to be doing some family-oriented events with Shiloh Baptist Church over by Hurley. And as a matter of fact, on Sunday the 9th, if you're not doing nothing, come to our church at Galena, because Shiloh's going to use our baptistry and baptize some folks. If you want to get baptized, if you can convince me that you're saved, I'll baptize you myself. No, you don't have to convince me. All you got to do is get saved. And so there's a lot of big deals going on. That's on the 9th when we're going to have a baptizing Sunday. And so people from Shiloh are coming with their people to baptize. Because they said, well, these kids, for some reason, didn't want to get baptized in the creek or in the James River. And we have a baptistry. It's not a fancy baptistry. It's a stock tank with a little wall around it. But you know what? Old William Green, when he was the pastor there, he piped up hot water to it so you don't have to freeze to death. You don't have to freeze to death in the baptism pool. So anyway, that'll be on the 9th. Of course, as I said, from the 2nd forward, I will be there every Sunday. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of you there. Chapter 46 of the book of the prophet Jeremiah. Hello, Gayla. God bless you. Y'all were right on the money. I don't know, it wasn't last night, was it? I think it was yesterday when I watched it, but you actually did the program Wednesday night. The band was cooking on Wednesday night. Anyway, and I heard y'all did a song I hadn't heard before. I'll have to talk to you about that later. Good morning, Charlie. Chapter 46, I'm just going to back up. We left off at verse 12 yesterday. I'm just going to back up and get us in context. This is after Babylon has defeated the imperial army of Egypt at Carchemish, which I've told you about several times in 607 BC. But God is telling Egypt that they got to get ready to fight again. And it'll be a while. It'll be a while, but this is a prophecy. The word of the Lord which came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Gentiles, against Egypt, against the army of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates in Carchemish, which Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, smote in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. Order ye the buckler and shield, and draw near to battle. Harness the horses, and get up, ye horsemen. Stand forth with your helmets, furbish your spears, and put on the brigadines. Wherefore have I seen them dismayed and turned away back? Their mighty ones are beaten down and are fled apace, and look not back, for fear was all around, saith the Lord. Let not the swift flee away, nor the mighty men escape. They shall stumble and fall toward the north by the river Euphrates. So they just had the tar whooped out of them by the Babylonians. And God's telling them, tormenting them, why are you running away? Get ready to fight. Who is this that cometh up as a flood, whose waters are moved as the rivers? Egypt riseth up like a flood, and his waters are moved like the rivers. And he saith, I will go up and will cover the earth. I will destroy the city and the inhabitants thereof. Come up, ye horses, and rage, ye chariots, and let the mighty men come forth, the Ethiopians, the Libyans that handle the shield, the Lydians that handle and bend the bow. For this is the day of the Lord of hosts. For this is the day of the Lord of hosts. Where you heard that before. See, this has a future prophetic meaning too. We're going to talk about this another time, but I've explained to you before that in the millennial kingdom, after the battle of Armageddon, that there is going to be a liberation and a rejoicing in Egypt and Assyria. And these ancient enemies of Israel are going to be friends with each other and with Israel. That was who Pharaoh Necho went up to fight on the Euphrates at the beginning of this chapter, were the Assyrians, who were then allies with Babylon and later completely assimilated into Babylon, the empire, the Babylonians, the Chaldean army. There's going to come a time, according to the scripture, when God will build a highway that will go from the south, from Egypt to Jerusalem, and a highway that'll go from the north, from Assyria to Jerusalem. And they will all serve the Lord in Jerusalem, in his temple, during the millennium. How's that going to work? I don't know. But it says it twice in the Old Testament. It would only said it once, and I would have believed it. So I don't know how all that's going to come about, but I want to talk about the history that happened, because that's clear. The prophecy to me is unclear. But there has never been a time when Egypt and Assyria have been allies with each other and friends of Israel and coming to worship in Jerusalem. That just has not happened yet, but it will during the millennium. For this is the day of the Lord of hosts, the day of vengeance, that he may avenge him of his adversaries. And the sword shall devour, and it shall satiate, and be made drunk with their blood. For the Lord God of hosts hath a sacrifice in the north country by the river Euphrates. Yeah, that's going to come. It hadn't come yet. It had come for the Egyptians then. That great sacrifice they're talking about is going to be the fall of Babylon. Babylon is not Rome. Babylon is Babylon. Babylon is used 280 times in the Bible. If you also figure in all the times it's called Babel or Chaldea or Shinar or Babel, it's like getting closer to 400 times. Every time it means Babylon. It don't mean Rome. Now, Babylon is as we talked about before, it is the birthplace of the mother-son cult, like the Virgin Mary, the perpetual Virgin Mary, and the baby Jesus. In Egypt, when they poured out their drinks to the Queen of Heaven, that was Isis and her son Horus. But it all goes back to Semiramis and Nimrod and their son Tammuz. The women in Ezekiel in his vision of the temple are weeping for Tammuz, Semiramis's baby, the mother son cult of Babylon. You see, it all begins and ends in Babylon. That'll be the great sacrifice by the river Euphrates. And the fall of it was great. The judgment of the great whore. Excuse me. I'm having trouble getting breath this morning. Babylon. Mystery Babylon the Great. Mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. The nations have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. She's going to get hers. That's the far prophecy of this, but now we're dealing with history. God is telling Egypt to go up into Gilead and take balm, O virgin, the daughter of Egypt. In vain shalt thou use thy medicines, for thou shalt not be cured. The nations have heard of thy shame, and thy cry hath filled the land. For the mighty man hath stumbled against the mighty, and they are both fallen together. What God is saying is, you just fought the best army in the world and you couldn't hit your butt with both hands as you slink away from the battlefield and go down into Egypt. Now we're cutting to the time after 20 years later. This prophecy was written around 607, right after the Battle of Carchemish. Jerusalem won't fall for another 20 years. 21 years, 586 BC. After that, sometimes, the remnant under the general Johanan goes down into Egypt, and they carry Jeremiah and Baruch captain with it. So Jeremiah is writing about his own captivity and Nebuchadnezzar's invasion of Egypt 21 years plus before it happened. And it did happen, because Nebuchadnezzar eventually came down into Egypt and destroyed their army and put a puppet king on the throne. And his dynasty reigned until Alexander's general Ptolemy came around the 320s BC. So that would be 250 years later. Here we go. Verse 13. Chapter 46 of Jeremiah. The word that the Lord spake to Jeremiah the prophet, how Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, should come and smite the land of Egypt. Now, this defeat of the Egyptian army wasn't a defeat of Egypt, but he defeated Egypt's imperial forces. The army they were trying to fight for control of the known world with Babylon, and they lost, and they had to retreat. But now we're talking about a later invasion of Egypt by the Babylonians. The word that the Lord spake to Jeremiah the prophet, how Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, should come and smite the land of Egypt. Declare ye in Egypt, and publish in Migdol, and publish in Nob, and in Tahpanhes. Do you know what? 21 plus years later, those are the very cities where Judah would run when they left Judah and came into Babylon. They were in Babylon, and they came down there, and it says they were at and they went down into Egypt. Shows where they had settled. I have to back up a few days, but they're the exact same cities. The exact same cities. Plus one more. Well, I can't find it, and I just taught it to you the other day. It was Migdol. Tahpanhes. But anyway, I came to Tahpanhes first, but they spread out. Yep, they dwelt at Migdal, Noph, Paphros, and Tahpanhes. He says, published in Migdal, Noph, and Tahpanhes. They left out Paphros. But these are the same cities where Judah would go and settle when they fled from before Nebuchadnezzar under Johanan, their general. When they took Jeremiah and Bariah, kidnapped them and took him, Baruch, and kidnapped them and took them down to Egypt. But God gave this prophecy to Jeremiah at least 21 years before that happened. Declare ye in Egypt, and publish in Migdal, and publish in Noph and Tahpanhes. Say ye, stand fast and prepare thee, for the sword shall devour round about thee. They're in your own land, Egypt. Why are thy valiant men swept away? They stood not, because the Lord did drive them. See, God, battle is the Lord's. God can decide who wins any battle. Anybody who's ever been in a battle tells you they turn on a dime. He made many to fall. Yeah, one fell upon another, and they said, arise, let us go again to our own people, to the land of our nativity from the oppressing sword. So that's what they did. They got destroyed. They got beaten down at the Euphrates. They straggled home. Let us go home where we can recover. And we'll be safe there. We'll be safe from the oppressing sword. God made many to fall, yea, one fell upon another. And they said, arise, let us go again to our own people and to the land of our nativity from the oppressing sword. They did cry there, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is but a noise. He hath passed the time appointed. After they got beat by the Babylonians at Carchemish, they were rebellious. They wouldn't listen to their king anymore. Who is Pharaoh? He's just flapping his yap. He's just an old windbag. He's telling us that we got to go back and fight. Well, we ain't going. He's outlived his time. They won't listen to him anymore. As I live, saith the King, whose name is the Lord of hosts, surely as Tabor is among the mountains, and Carmel by the sea, so shall he come. In other words, Nebuchadnezzar is going to come down there to Egypt where you think you're safe. And he's going to get you. He's going to get you. O thou daughter dwelling in Egypt, furnish thyself to go into captivity, for Noph shall be waste and desolate without an inhabitant. It's another mystery. This could mean one of two things. I tend to think it could mean both. But he would call Israel his daughter at a time or two. He would call them that. But then there's that prophecy about Assyria and Egypt. I think it's in chapter 20 of Isaiah. I was trying to look for it. And I can't find it, but this is a prophecy about Egypt. And so there's going to come a day, verse 4, chapter 20 of Isaiah. This was 150, nearly 200 years before this, 160. So shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians and the Ethiopians captive, young and old, naked, barefoot, even with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt. And they shall be afraid. And ashamed of Ethiopia, their expectation, of Egypt, their glory. And all the inhabitants, they're going to say, well, who's going to help you against the king of Assyria? And of course, it was in the land of Assyria that fell, and the invader that's going to come is Nebuchadnezzar, who is the dictator, the king who's taken over from the Assyrians. Should be furnish thyself to go into captivity, O thou daughter dwelling in Egypt. It could be Egypt itself, because remember, there will come a time when he will call Egypt and Assyria his friends. That had never happened yet. I'm waiting to see how that comes about. It says, furnish thyself to go into captivity, for Noph shall be waste and desolate, without an inhabitant. He may be talking to the ones that Johanan let down, because they were afraid Nebuchadnezzar was going to kill them in Judah, so they run to Egypt. He might be talking about the daughter of his own people. Both would fit. Said, Egypt is like a fair heifer, but destruction cometh. It cometh out of the north. You think you're safe in Egypt. It's only a matter of time. Also her hired men are in the midst of her like fatted bullocks, for they also are turned back and are fled away together. They did not stand because the day of their calamity was come upon them in the time of their visitation. They went back home, and they got fat. They started eating good. They got comfortable. We went out and defended the world over and over again. We decided we didn't like it too much, so we came home and got fat and soft. That's what happens to you. It happened to Egypt here. Verse 22, the voice thereof shall go like a serpent, for they shall march with an army and come against her with axes as hewers of wood. They're going to lay down Egypt. They always had axemen that came because they would chop down. Now, this was a desert place. A lot of these places were. Of course, around the Nile River, it was fertile. They would cut down trees to build their walls and their works of war, their bulwarks, their casting mounts, building towers. They would cut down wood for fires. You got, tens of thousands of soldiers that you got to feed every day. Come against her with axes. They shall cut down her forest, saith the Lord, though it cannot be searched, because they are more than the grasshoppers and are innumerable. They're going to cut down your whole forest, and you won't even know what came upon you, because they're going to be like locusts. It's talking about the multitude of the Chaldean army that's going to one day come down in there and set everything right. The daughter of Egypt shall be confounded. She shall be delivered into the hand of the people of the north. At the time of the writing, he meant the Assyrians, who were just coming under the control of Babylon. They were allies with Babylon. Now, at the time of the prophecy, when the prophecy would be fulfilled, they would be completely subsumed into the Babylonian Empire under Nebuchadnezzar. The daughter of Egypt shall be confounded. She shall be delivered into the hand of the people of the north. The Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, saith, Behold, I will punish the multitude of No and Pharaoh in Egypt with their gods and their kings, even Pharaoh, and all them that trust in him. You see, Judah had already been judged by God. The remnant of Judah could have stayed in Judah, and God would have taken care of them. He would have called Nebuchadnezzar to have mercy on them, and they would have been just fine. But no, they had to go down into Egypt. And not knowing the scriptures, they didn't know that Egypt had already been doomed over 21 years ago by a prophecy that Baruch wrote by the mouth of Jeremiah way back in 607, right after the Battle of Carchemish. And I will deliver them into the hand of those that seek their lives, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, into the hands of his servants. And afterwards it shall be inhabited as in the old days, saith the Lord. I'm going to deliver all of those that are afraid of Nebuchadnezzar into his hands. And in that day that he's writing the prophecy for, the near meaning of that prophecy, he's also going to be delivering to them the men and women of Judah who would not obey, the men and women of Judah who escaped into Egypt and took Jeremiah and Baruch with them, the men and women of Judah who baked cakes unto the Queen of Heaven and poured out drink offerings to the Queen of Heaven and wept for her satanic bastard son Tammuz, which is all a perversion of the Son of God. He started perverting the gospel. Satan did from the very beginning. He is the author of all false religion. It began at Babel and continues to this day. But fear not thou, O my servant Jacob. Be not dismayed, O Israel. For behold, I will save thee from afar off, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. And Jacob shall return and be at rest and at ease, and none shall make him afraid. Yeah, they returned all right, not those one that went down into Egypt, although God said he would save a handful and let them go back to tell the story. He's talking about the return from Babylon of the captivity. That happened. That's what he's talking about in the first part. But you see, Israel, the northern kingdom, it never did come back. It was scattered, it was dispersed, and it never returned. That's for the future, as I've explained before. It said, you go back to the land of your nativity, come from the land of your captivity, and shall go home, and Jacob shall return and be in rest and at ease, and none shall make him afraid. That's never happened till today. Now, right now, Jacob's not afraid of anything. We're talking about the nation of Israel. But Jacob is not at rest, and he's not at ease. He will be in the coming kingdom. Israel will be restored and delivered, the remnant. They will enter into the kingdom that they rejected during crucifixion week 2,000 plus years ago. Fear thou not, O Jacob, my servant, saith the Lord, I am with thee. I will make thee a full end of all the nations whither I have driven thee. But I will not make a full end of thee, but will correct thee in measure, yet will I not leave thee wholly unpunished. I'm going to be hard on you, but I'm going to be even harder on your enemies. I'm going to make a full end of all the nations that have tortured and killed and oppressed you. And then after that is over, after that temporal punishment is done, I'm going to take the remnant of Jacob, of Israel, and I'm going to bring them back into their own land. And I'm going to rule over them from the throne of my father David. I'm going to rule with a rod of iron, and the law shall go forth from Mount Zion. It's interesting that people are afraid to talk about prophecy. Is this complicated? Yes. Jeremiah, God gave this prophecy to Jeremiah in 607 after the Egyptian imperial army was defeated at the Battle of Carchemish by the Babylonian Empire, but in a battle led by the Assyrian army, who were allied at the time of Babylon before they were completely taken over. 607 BC. That's when he got then he talks about a future deal. And then it happened in history. It happened around 580 BC that Nebuchadnezzar's army finally pushed down into Egypt and just robbed it like a bank, looted it like a chicken, like a fox in the hen house. Just took what they wanted and left them ruined and killed many people. And as God promised all those people that went down there to escape Nebuchadnezzar, because of their disobedience, he caused the sword of Nebuchadnezzar to catch up with them there, the place to where they had fled, to escape that sword. But then that prophecy was fulfilled in 580 BC. But there's a long-range view of this prophecy that will not be fulfilled until the Messianic kingdom, until Jesus rules on the throne in Jerusalem. I got to find that verse. Let's see if I can do this here. I know that guys that are really into the broadcasting thing, they've got everything figured out. I don't have nothing figured out. I can only do one thing at a time. But I will look up to Egypt, Syria, Israel. There's a verse. Yeah, I had it a while ago. I was one chapter off. I said Isaiah 20. Let's look at Isaiah 19. In that day, the day of the Battle of Armageddon, the day that after the Battle of Armageddon, when the kingdom is set up. See, there's only 2 days in the Bible. There's today and that day. That day means the return of Christ. Chapter 19 of Isaiah, verse 23. In that day shall there be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrian shall come into Egypt, and the Egyptian into Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. What's right in the middle between Egypt and Assyria? Israel. Verse 24, in that day shall Israel be a third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land. Whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, mine inheritance. Do I know what this means? No. I don't. I don't understand it. All I know is that the Bible says it's going to happen. It's going to be during the kingdom age, because that's the only time it could happen. Because everybody there is a Muslim, and they're not going to be friends with Israel. Not on this kind of level. Not to a kind of level where God says, I'm going to bless them. No, this is a far future thing. Egypt and Assyria will be third part. They'll all be receiving the blessings of God. And I believe that's in the kingdom. So there is a far future fulfillment of this policy, of this prophecy. So we will end there. Fear not, O Jacob, my servant. Fear not, O Jimmy, my servant. Fear not, Charlie and Gayla. Fear not, good people of Christian County and Stone County. All is well. God bless you.